Damien, episode 6, Temptress. Now, just to start things off, I kind of understand, like, just from the way that all the crazy, the really crazy stuff that happened in this episode, with the way all of that played out, I could easily see this one kind of splitting people up as far as, people that thought it was a worthwhile episode and some people who didn't, because it was the type of episode that seemed a lot like filler because we find out by the end that this whole thing is actually him unconscious. Like in the beginning of the episode, we thought he woke up from the last episode and being pulled out of the garage by the dogs. But we find out at the end this entire episode has been basically a dream sequence. And in a lot of cases, I could see that being an issue, especially with how a lot of things played out in this episode. But I don't think that detracts from what this episode actually brought to the table. I think it was still a fun episode, and even in the promo, they kind of show that what occurred in this episode will continue on into the next episode. Like, even though it was a dream, for him, it's going to be in his head. Like, they even have it where he's talking to his friend, like, you're working with Anne Rutledge. And it was just, I actually really loved this episode, even though it ended up being a dream sequence. And I kind of would have liked to have seen where they took certain things. Once it got to the end, it got really crazy. Like, and honestly, I was like, okay, he's dreaming. Yeah, like at the end of it, like, oh, he's probably um, just in the cop car or something like that. Kind of like with the last episode when he was at the hospital. I was like, he has to be sitting somewhere. Like, especially when he thought like the woman like basically multiplied and was trying to attack him in the back of the car. I was like, he has to be like he's obviously dreaming. And then they start showing the glimpses. I thought those guys were cops at first, and then that's when we realized that he's inside an ambulance still, and the people that attacked him early on in the episode were actually the EMTs, and I loved that. I was like, that's actually kind of cool. They had what we thought was a great twist, which actually ended up not being real, was his mother coming back to life, and I love that scene. I knew she was going to die in the episode because, of course, as soon as it happened, it was like somehow Anne Rutledge got there, like she tracked him or something, which that in itself was really fun. Like even without it all being real, and that's the thing about it. Like, yes, none of it was real, but the feelings I got from this episode were actually really great. Like, it's kind of the type of episode I want the show to be in general because it was really crazy. They had like this crazy logical explanation, and then it was like, well, we know he's the devil, but he's getting all these weird logical explanations about tattoos and stuff, and it was just very interesting. I was like, this is weird. Like, they're giving logical explanations, but we as viewers know that he's the devil, or the son of the devil. So it's like, man, this is crazy because it has to transition from this to something else, and that's like really the only bad thing about it because they did so many crazy things. Some stuff I'm fine that it didn't continue. Mostly the Shay thing at the end when they like killed him. I was like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, they killed both these guys who seem fairly important, and it answers a lot of questions. Though by the end, it answered a bunch of questions because when Damien took Shay to the tattoo artist, like, look, I'll take you to this guy, everything will be fine. First thing I was like, it's weird that he'd even stop. That was the first thing I thought was weird, that he'd even bother to even listen to anything he had to say, because it's like, oh, I heard about your mom. That in itself I thought was weird, and the stuff with Anne and his buddy, them at the restaurant and stuff. I was like, this is just getting really, it's crazier and crazier for this episode. So there are all these weird things that kept happening. Like, that doesn't make sense. This is weird. When the tattoo artist was dead and they had all the blades, like stabbed all over him, the first thing I thought was like, are these blades even important? Like, does anybody actually care? Because they just stabbed him a bunch of times. I was like, they acted like those blades were super important in the beginning. So it makes a lot of sense now because that was all like in his hallucination. But I loved it. I still love the feeling that I got from it. The stuff with Simone and them making out and stuff, and like he kissed her the first time, but she went along with it. And as soon as that happened, I was like, that's not her. There's no way that that's her. And then especially at the end, I was like, oh man, they got to her somehow. Like, maybe it was the weird fetus thing or something. They've gotten a hold of her somehow, and we have to see how that continues on. But it was just in his own head, and I don't know what that says about him. The fact that he made it where she was, for whatever reason, oddly attracted to him, or anything, like all this stuff that was happening, there are a lot of different elements to it that couldn't possibly have been just him. I mean, they have him do basically this whole investigation, and he finds his mother still alive, and she gives him this story about how she never knew, and how she took off, and how these people hid him from her. And, Anne Rutledge showing up at random, which that I did equate to, oh, maybe she just tracked him down or something. But all these different things, and just the investigations and his mother being alive, and then of course she dies, and we have actually a pretty interesting fight scene when he tries to kill Anne and the two guys run in, which was still a great scene. Even if that was fake, that was probably my favorite scene, when he just lost it, because it was like he found his mother. And I thought it was going to be like, even when they said mom, I was like, well, it can't be his mom because she died. But I guess technically in the movie they don't, I believe they do say that she died, but I don't know if they do or not. I can't really remember. It's been a long time since I watched the movie. But I thought it was going to be like his foster parents that he found after a long time. But it was his actual mother. And when he thought she was gone, he just lost it. And I was like, this I want to see, because it's Damien getting insanely dark. And it still had an impact, at the end of this episode, because of what he says to Anne when he's like basically trying to like terminate or crush her hand. And she gets away from that, and she like breaks down. She like bursts into tears because she's really losing him. She even says like, I pushed you too far. And he tried to kill himself to kind of get out of all this madness. And I love that idea. Like, even that, which is of course the real stuff of this episode, that's gonna bleed over. Like, she's gonna try to kind of correct her mistake of pushing him to the point of suicide. And now that he's had this very lucid, dream, where he comes up with every logical explanation. Like, she has put these crazy bugs from like South Africa. It possibly, poisoned a bunch of my food to give me hallucinations. These guys, beat me up, and they tattooed me, and it was the guy from the elevator, which I thought was weird. That was another thing. I was like, so he works at the, like, he works as a nurse, I would assume, even though he was in the morgue. Like, okay, so he works as a nurse like during the day, and then he goes to the crazy tattoo parlor, illegal tattoo parlor club at night. Like, all right, people can have multiple, very different jobs. And it was just the way that he kind of twisted everything in his actual world. It said, like I said, the stuff with Simone, that says a lot about him. And kind of seeing his friend and seeing him with Anne, and just the suspicions that he has, and some stuff is of course true. And it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the next episode, who he confronts and how he confronts them. Like with Simone, he probably won't bring up them making out and all that stuff in the hallucination, because that's just like, okay, that was weird, but it happened. But his suspicions about the wrong people, working together, that's a big deal. That's something he kind of has to confront. And I don't mind this being like a big dream episode, because it was still really good. With it being this type of show, I think it can pull off something like this. It's probably one of the few shows that should have like a full episode that's actually like a dream sequence, where things are just crazy and start to kind of seemingly just completely fall apart by the end, because we have Shay arresting him, and then he stops. And if I remember right, during the scene where he's like, why are we stopping, the radio does turn on by itself, but Shay doesn't say anything. And then his buddy gets in, and it's like, alright, so they know each other, then they both get out, and they're talking, and we don't know what's happening. And then the random woman comes up, and it's like, alright, so they're working together, this random woman comes up, and it's just like a creepy thing where she's in between them to signify that or something, I don't know. And then she kills both of them, and I'm like, how is this even happening? They're killing off, two important characters, especially in Shay, who, just survived an attack and saved his son. So I was like, it doesn't make sense for them to kill this guy off in such a crazy way. Like, so many questions. And then it's all a crazy dream sequence, and I'm okay with that for this type of show. And I think the main reason is because it showed the much crazier side. It was basically the 60-minute version of Damien in the morgue from the last episode. And I love that, actually. Like, I like that idea. And the logical explanations they had were actually really cool, even though it was, him doing that himself and coming up with every logical reason how it could have worked, even if it was, very fantastic. It was just like this crazy bug from, across the world. She did, she poisoned me. and it gives me all these crazy hallucinations. So I love that. I thought it was really cool to have these logical explanations, which, they were so logical. It's like, man, this is weird how he's finding all this logical stuff, and it's truly in his system, with the bug and the poison, but it was just an interesting little back and forth. Like, okay, so it's logical answers, but we know he is Damien Thorn. We know he's the son of the devil, and the stuff with the tattoos, I was trying to figure that out. Like, it's a tattoo, so and just plus it's like, the mark of the devil, so it's not like that's gonna just fade away. But I'm like, I don't know, like I wasn't sure, but I love the way that played out. It was, logical explanations, and then things got crazier and crazier. People were just dying, and the blades, which, like I said, stuff's just starting to not make any sense. And then, the closer he gets to waking up, the crazier the dream gets, and it just starts to completely fall apart piece by piece. And it's like, I don't understand it. And then, poof, he wakes up. It's like, wow, that was a crazy 60 minutes of stuff. But I loved it. I thought it was really fun. I loved all the craziness of the episode. I'm actually really excited to see how his dream does translate into the actual story of the episode, because although it might seem like filler, it's definitely, even though it was in his own mind, and we mostly see this from the trailer, we know that he's going to confront the people he's closest to. At least, the guy Herschel, I still don't remember his actual name in the show, but I'm just going to call him Herschel. Um, but we see from the trailer for the next episode, the promo, that he's going to confront him and be like, I know you're working with Anne Rutledge. And maybe he is actually a good guy, because that was one of the things as well, where it's like, so he actually is still working with her, and, they have the scene, which, this is a great scene, when they're both talking, and it's like, we'll figure out how to take her down, and the FBI can't get anything on her and stuff, and that old woman was just walking really slow in the background. It was super creepy, because it was like, clearly she's listening to them, but I don't know what's going to happen to him. And I guess that was the old lady, or it was a different old lady. I'm not sure. I think that was a different old lady than the one that was, like, cracking the eggs, because I'm pretty sure that's who was at the end of this episode. But I love that scene, because it's just them talking, and it's like, we can't get any info on her. The FBI couldn't get anything on her. She's, impossible to touch. And this lady's just walking really, really slow in the background. And, she's, like, really far off, too, so she's blurry, but they're right there, and you can just see straight down. And I was like, I really like this shot. It just looked cool, and then they would actually flip to her perspective, and we kind of see over her shoulder. And I was like, this is actually a really great shot. It's not too menacing, but it's definitely got like a weird, creepy vibe to it, because we know this woman is listening in on their conversation. And I enjoyed that. I was like, it's nice, creepy little vibe. Neither of them really know what's going on, but we as the audience know stuff is weird. Of course, as soon as they like split and they showed the angle of the woman, I was like, clearly something's going on with this lady. But I just like that shot. She's walking really, really slow. They still had like sound effects for her, for quite a while, for her walking in her actual walker too. But I really enjoyed that scene. That's probably actually my favorite scene of the whole episode. Just the way it was shot and how it was, they were kind of oblivious to everything that was happening. Well, it was really just this lady, but they were oblivious that she was kind of honing in on what was happening, even though it was all in Damien's head. But I really enjoyed this episode. It like truly, like I said, it was like the 60-minute version of him in the morgue from the last episode, which I loved that part of the episode as well. That was really great, because it was crazy, and that's what the show should be. And I mentioned that last time, and they played up for a full episode. But I like the fact that it was just a crazy dream, and it doesn't have any impact at all. So I'm glad that, even for people that may not have enjoyed it because it may have seemed like just filler, it really will play an important part, because he's going to have to figure out what is truly happening, even though it was all a dream. He has to consider, what part of this am I making up, and what parts of this am I just not realizing? Like, subconsciously, what am I realizing, and, what am I just flat out making up from that dream? So, I'm actually really excited for this next episode. These last two have actually been really, really good, and I really hope the show kind of keeps at this pace, because, they definitely stuck to the one death, even if it was technically a fake death. We got to see it. Also, probably the easiest death to predict, I think, in the whole show, outside of maybe the guy fighting with Damien in the second episode, is probably the second easiest one, because it was like they're arguing and stuff. It's like, this guy's not gonna kill Damien, and he's gonna die. But I still enjoyed it, and it led to a really cool scene, which is real for Damien at least. He didn't actually get to. He didn't technically choke Anne Rutledge, but he wanted to, and like I said, he says that to her at the end, and he still has those feelings. I mean, his suicide happened because of everything that kind of got explained to him and his new position in life, basically, and all the weird stuff happening around him. That's why he kind of had that moment where it's like he found solace in his mother, and then here comes Anne Rutledge again to destroy every, like, the last little speck of hope he had. Anne Rutledge destroyed that. So that's where she is in his head. Like, she is the cause of every problem. Like, she is the problem in his life. So that's just going to be amplified now that he's had that thing. Even though it wasn't real, it's still in his head. And it clearly was, even at the very end. Like, she wasn't even in the episode after that scene. And, or I guess technically, yes, she was. Because she was at the restaurant. That was after the mom stuff. But they didn't have, like, a confrontation in his dream after that moment. And as soon as he came out of the dream, it was like, the first thing was like, I wish I killed you. So that's a big deal for him. And I can't wait to see how they play it out. Like I said, I hope that the series continues on like these last two episodes really have, because I've certainly loved them. Like I said, the crazy stuff, it works well for the show. When they do it right, they definitely do the craziness very well. So I really loved it, because for the last episode, it was pretty obvious. I was like, okay, so he's obviously kind of messed up when he's going to the morgue. And then this one, once the scene happened in the cop car, not knowing the whole episode was him hallucinating, having a dream, I was just like, I don't understand what's happening. Like, obviously I realized it was a dream once it got to the end, and then the whole thing was a dream. But when it first happened, I was like, so Shay is actually working for him, or maybe they got to him. And same with Simone, because I was like, oh, they got to her, maybe they got to Shay as well, and magic or whatever, because still kind of weird trying to figure out how that plays out. But I really loved it. I really enjoyed this one. Of course, I want to know what you guys thought about it, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. And out of everything that happened in this episode, everything that Damien either made for himself or maybe subconsciously realized finally, I want to know, what do you think will have the greatest impact once we get to the next episode? Because based on the promo, it's him confronting the one man he thought he could trust because he's working with Anne Rutledge. But I think it's going to be him kind of realizing, because he came up with all these logical solutions, I think once we get to the next episode, it's going to kind of hit him even harder. Like, all that stuff that was logical doesn't exist. It truly is magic. Because even in his dream, he asks Anne, like, tell me the actual story. And she tells him, like, in his dream, and he's like, you're lying. And even in the dream, he knew that, he said that, but she's still like, oh, you don't believe me. So I think once we get to the next episode, despite all the rage he might be having, I think that'll be the greatest impact. He'll realize, I made up all that logical stuff because this truly defies logic. I might actually be the son of the devil, which he doesn't want to be, although I want him to be because I want to see the craziness. But that's kind of my prediction. I think that's what will hit him the hardest, but I definitely want to know what you guys think. And of course, what you guys thought about this episode in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.